When I bought this lake house 30 years ago, I thought I'd found my forever home, a peaceful retreat where I could watch the sunset over the water every evening. The HOA promised to protect our community's charm and property values, but I never imagined they'd turn from protectors to predators, concocting a scheme to steal my home right out from under me. What they didn't count on was me uncovering their decades-old secret that would bring their entire house of cards crashing down. Comment below with the wildest HOA rule you've ever seen, and hit subscribe so you don't miss the shocking ending. Back in 1993, when I first purchased my little slice of heaven on Willow Lake, this community was everything I'd dreamed of for my retirement. Neighbors knew each other by name. We had annual 4th of July barbecues where the whole town would show up. Kids would fish off the dock while their parents swapped stories about the old days. I'd worked hard my whole life, first as a carpenter, then as a foreman, to save enough for this place. Every nail I hammered, every beam I raised, felt like an investment in my future. The HOA back then was run by folks like me, people who cared about the community. We had reasonable rules: keep your lawn maintained, no boats over 20 feet at the community dock, respect quiet hours after 10 p.m. Simple stuff designed to protect everyone's property values and peace of mind. I even served on the board for 6 years in the late 90s, helping draft some of the original covenants that were supposed to protect homeowners. But times change. Last year, everything changed when Margaret Peterson was elected HOA president. If you've ever met a Karen in your life, Margaret was the queen of them all. She moved into the community 5 years ago, buying one of the newer McMansions that replaced the original cottage-style homes. From day one, she complained about everything: my weathered dock, which I'd built myself and maintained perfectly, the color of my shutters, the same forest green they'd been for 30 years, even the ancient oak tree in my yard that blocked her view of the lake. The trouble started small, as it always does. First came a notice 50 fine for unauthorized dock modifications. When I asked what modifications they were referring to, they couldn't specify. I attended the next HOA meeting, prepared to show photos of my dock from the day I bought the house compared to now. Margaret dismissed my evidence with a wave of her hand. "Rules are rules, Mr. Henderson," she said with that condescending smile that makes my blood boil even now. "The board has determined that your dock doesn't meet current community standards. If you think this HOA is out of control now, just wait for the twist coming up. Subscribe so you never miss another instant karma story." The fines kept coming. $75 for excessive yard decoration, because I had a small American flag flying on my porch. $200 for improper storage of my fishing boat, which had sat in the same spot behind my garage for 15 years. Each violation was more absurd than the last, and each carried a steeper penalty. What I didn't know then was that similar letters were being sent to other original homeowners, mostly elderly folks like me who'd been in the community for decades. Old Mr. Wilson down the street got fined $500 for his dilapidated mailbox, the same handmade wooden box his father had built when the community was founded in 1952. Mrs. Garcia received violation notices for her non-compliant garden of prize-winning roses she'd been cultivating for 30 years. The pattern became clear when I ran into Tom Jenkins at the hardware store. Tom had lived here since the 80s and was now facing 3-0 in fines for structural issues with his perfectly maintained home. "They're trying to drive us out, Mark," he told me, his voice low and angry. "All the original homeowners. Margaret and her developer friends have been buying up properties as soon as people get fed up and leave." That's when I knew this wasn't just about power-hungry HOA members. This was a coordinated land grab. Our properties, sitting on prime lakefront land, were worth a fortune to developers. And Margaret and her cronies on the HOA board were using their authority to force us out. Things escalated quickly after that conversation. One morning, I found a certified letter from the HOA's attorney informing me that I had 30 days to pay $12,500 in accumulated fines and legal fees, or they would begin foreclosure proceedings on my home. My hands shook as I read that letter. This wasn't just a house, this was my life's work, my retirement, my sanctuary. The thought of losing it, of some developer tearing down my home to build another generic McMansion, made me physically ill. I called a real estate attorney immediately, but the news wasn't good. "HOAs have broad powers in this state," she explained. "If they've followed proper procedure, they can potentially foreclose over unpaid fines." I was devastated. For the first time, I considered just paying the money, even though it would wipe out a significant portion of my savings. but something inside me refused to give in. This was wrong, and I couldn't let them get away with it. That weekend, I drove to the county records office. I needed to understand my rights, to find something, anything that could help me fight back. For hours, I pored over property records, HOA bylaws, and community covenants. Most of what I found was discouraging. The HOA had indeed updated their bylaws in recent years, giving themselves sweeping powers to fine and foreclose. Just as I was about to give up, the clerk brought me a dusty folder containing the original property covenants from when the community was founded in 1952. My eyes scanned the legal language, most of it standard stuff about property use and maintenance. But then I found it buried in paragraph 17. Subsection B was a clause that made my heart race. Properties adjacent to Willow Lake shall be protected from seizure by any homeowners association or governing body. Any development or alteration of lakefront properties must receive unanimous approval from all original property owners or their descendants. I couldn't believe what I was reading. This clause, written over 70 years ago, was specifically designed to prevent exactly what Margaret and her cronies were trying to do. It was my secret weapon. But I needed more proof of their scheme. Over the next few weeks, I reached out to other original homeowners who'd been targeted. Slowly, we built a case, gathering evidence of the HOA's selective enforcement, their connections to local developers, and their systematic targeting of long-term residents. The breaking point came when I discovered that Margaret's husband was part owner of Lakeside Development Group, the company that had submitted plans to the city for a luxury condominium complex on undeveloped lakefront property. The plan showed my house, Mr. Wilson's, and 3 other original homes marked for demolition. Armed with the original covenant, evidence of corruption, and testimony from half a dozen homeowners, I requested a special meeting of the HOA. Margaret tried to deny my request, but according to their own bylaws, she couldn't refuse if 10 homeowners demanded it. We had 20. The night of the meeting, the community center was packed, every seat filled, people standing along the walls. Margaret sat at the front table with her board members, looking smug and confident. She began the meeting by announcing that they would be discussing ongoing compliance issues with certain properties. When it was my turn to speak, I walked to the podium, hands steady for the first time in months. Before we discuss compliance issues, I said, my voice clear and firm, I think we need to address the elephant in the room, the systematic attempt by this board to force out original homeowners so that Lakeside Development Group can acquire prime lakefront properties. The room erupted in gasps and murmurs. Margaret's face went pale. I have here, I continued, holding up the original covenant, a document that this board seems to have forgotten about. It specifically prohibits HOA seizure of lakefront properties and requires unanimous approval from original owners for any development. I then presented evidence of the connection between the HOA board and the development company, including property records, emails, and financial statements showing how HOA funds had been misused to target specific homeowners. As I spoke, I watched Margaret's carefully constructed facade crumble. Her fellow board members shifted uncomfortably, some looking genuinely shocked at the evidence being presented. By the end of my presentation, the crowd was on their feet, demanding answers. Margaret tried to defend herself, but her lies were transparent. Within minutes, the board members who weren't directly implicated in the scheme were calling for her resignation. The fallout was swift and satisfying. Margaret and her 2 closest allies on the board resigned within days. The county attorney opened an investigation into the HOA's financial practices, and Lakeside Development Group withdrew their plans for the condominium complex. But the best part? The community came together. We elected a new HOA board composed of both original homeowners and newer residents who genuinely cared about preserving our community's character. We revised the bylaws to prevent the kind of abuse we'd experienced, strengthening protections for all homeowners. 6 months later, I sit on my dock, watching the sunset over Willow Lake, just as I have for 30 years. The water is peaceful, the neighborhood is quiet, and my home is safe. Sometimes, I see Margaret drive through the community. She still owns her house, but she keeps to herself now. This fight wasn't just about a house. It was about standing up to bullies who thought they could use their position to prey on the vulnerable. It was about honoring the legacy of those who built this community and protecting it for future generations. If you're facing a similar situation, remember that knowledge is power. Know your rights, know your property's history, and know that you don't have to face these battles alone. What's the most ridiculous HOA rule you've ever heard of? Share your story in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this tale of justice served, make sure to hit that subscribe button for more stories about everyday people standing up to injustice.